So unfortunately, I didn't think about recording the teardown of the leaf blower, but basically it's the same as reassembling, but in reverse order. As you can see, I'm not actually in my basement, but rather in my garage. I didn't feel like it was responsible for me to have this much gasoline and stuff in my basement. So here's the old piston. I set it aside when I pulled it out. The ring is pretty much solidified onto the piston itself from all of the oil and gas mixture, creating a tarry mess right here. As you can see, it's tightly packed, preventing the ring from expanding and getting good compression. Here's the new piston. As you can see, the ring has plenty of slack and you can actually compress it pretty good. This is what you get when you get a new piston that's not all gummed up and everything. Right here there's a mark on the piston. This mark has to line up with a certain point in the cylinder sleeve where you took it out to avoid busting the piston. I'm also going to put some oil on the connecting rod bearings so that when it goes on to the crank, they'll spin freely upon that first startup. Here I'm going to add a little bit of oil to the piston ring so it slides down into the cylinder sleeve a little easier. That way it won't damage any of the components and it makes the initial startup much easier to operate. Here we just slip the piston down into the cylinder by compressing the ring just so ever slightly. That allows it to slide right down. Now that I have the piston in the cylinder sleeve, I'm going to slip it right down into the hole where the cylinder sleeve mounts to the case, and I'm going to adjust the connecting rod so it slips right over the crankshaft. Now it's just simply screwing all the bolts back down onto the cylinder head so that it fits onto the crankshaft and making sure everything is sealed up tightly. Word of advice right here, you want to actually put the bolts into the cylinder head before you slip it down in there, unless you got a magnetic screwdriver, which I don't have. So I accidentally dropped one of the bolts down there and I had to go fish it out. But that only took a few extra seconds to a minute or so, and then once I got it out and learned my lesson the hard way, and I was able to get the bolts back in fine. Okay, here we're going to connect the carburetor back up to the cylinder head. It's a good idea to actually connect the linkage to the carburetor before you actually screw it in, otherwise you might find that it's difficult to get the linkage reconnected back in, since you can't really move the carburetor around and the linkage is set to go only back and forth from the throttle. And making sure to get the carburetor gasket in. Here I'm cleaning out the crankcase seal area so I can put the cap back on. It's nothing more than a little plastic cap on these little 2-cycle engines, but we don't want any dirt or grime getting in there, so we'll clean it all out and screw it back in. Here we're going to screw the muffler back on to the cylinder head or cylinder as well. You need to make sure you get the exhaust gasket in there, otherwise you'll have leak and it'll blow everywhere. Be sure to get the heat shrouds back in also, so that they help protect the rest of the blower motor housing from the heat that the engine generates. I'm reattaching the spark plug right now. It's much easier to get the spark plug in now than later. To put the black cover back over the engine side. There are 3 screw mounts, 2 up top and 1 down low. You just simply get it snapped back in and then screw it all in. Put the air filter foam back in and put the air filter cap back on as well. I'm just pulling the cord a few times to see the compression difference. It's got significantly more compression back to where it should be, as opposed to when I first started, when you could just freely spin the motor without any resistance. I'm just going to fire it up right quick and run it a few seconds to give it a little bit of a break in to make sure it's got plenty of pick up and draw down before I really take it out for a good use. Now I'm taking it outside the garage here a little bit to break it in just a little bit before I actually really use it hard out in the yard. I don't want to run it really hard right away. I want to break it in order to not damage the new components. The leaf blower actually sounded really good, starting up, shutting down, starting up and accelerating it. I didn't seem to have any problems, so I think we're good.